Get you in the right place. This morning's session is about homelessness and digital exclusion. Couple of housekeeping points before we get going and I introduce what the session is going to be about. We're going to be recording. Okay, we're going to be recording today so that this can be shared later on the Digital Partnerships website. So if I could ask you to obviously mute your audio until we get to questions at the end of the sessions. But also, if you don't want your lovely face to appear on the video, I'd ask you to turn the video off as well. So you've got that option. Slides will be available after the event, so please take any notes you like, but we'll be sharing those with you. Please use the chat. As I say, we'll be doing the 3 presentations and then taking questions at the end. So please, if you'd like to put your questions in the chat. Here's a technical one. Closed captions are off. So if you'd like to turn those on, apparently you need to go to the CC button at the bottom of the screen. So without any further ado, let's crack on. Thanks for joining us. Our focus, as I say, is on digital exclusion and how it's compounded by homelessness. You'll hear from me first, so I'm going to rattle through fairly quickly, setting the scene and posing a few questions. Then Simon Alcott from Riverside is going to talk to you about some of the work they've been doing at the foyer here in Cambridge. And then Melody and Leon will talk to you about the brilliant work that Wintercomfort have been doing during the pandemic, before and after. And then we'll open it up to the floor. So without any further ado, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, if everybody can see that, I'll crack on, as I say, because time is quite tight. So this is my office. I thought I'd talk to you today about where I'm talking to you from. This is my office. During the pandemic, obviously we all started to work from home, and I was lucky enough to have a spare bedroom where I could build this little desk. And you'll see on the desk is my new Lenovo laptop, which I bought last year. As I was online and have an internet connection, I got a really good deal on that. And my Virgin Fibre, full fibre broadband connection is currently running at 43 megabytes per second. So you can see I'm set up pretty well. I do 95% of all my work on this laptop, but I also do most of my shopping. I do all of my banking. I order prescriptions. I renew my ID documents, driving licenses, insurances, etc. I also stream films. I listen to a lot of music whilst I'm sitting at my desk. And obviously I keep in touch with loved ones and friends using social media. I also have my iPhone. And again, another good deal that I got on the internet. So essentially I can take my connectivity with me wherever I go. And that's probably true for many of us on this call today. We're doing okay digitally. But I just want you to imagine if all that connectedness, all that connectivity was suddenly taken away from you. And just think about, in a world that's becoming increasingly digital by default, without that connection, you face social isolation, but also potential financial sanctions. You might miss appointments with key workers, benefits advisors, probation officers. And as you'll see in a moment, you may even miss out on a bed, somewhere to sleep and get off the streets for the night. If you're lucky enough to be homeless and have a phone, it can often become lost or stolen. And with no permanent address, you're probably relying upon a pay-as-you-go SIM. Okay, so what do you prioritise? You run out of data, but you know you've got that appointment you've got to keep, or you've got to keep the universal credit claim going. Do you buy food? Do you find something else, or do you pay for data? Hopefully you can see this. I asked my colleagues at the Sun Network if they could talk to people with lived experience, homeless now or previously homeless, about what being unconnected, being disconnected and excluded felt like. And they spoke to the co-production group, which is a group that meets regularly, people with lived experience and people working in the sector. Just have a look around the screen. I think you'll find that actually, the words of those people themselves highlight the points I've just made. So, for example, if you don't have a phone on the streets, you're isolated. Jimmy's, if Jimmy's is filling up, it says here, and you're trying to get a limited space for the night, you don't have a phone, you can miss out on your spot. Let's talk about vulnerability here. Let's talk about how your mental health can deteriorate, and how that connectedness, being able to connect with people that are going through similar things, can make you feel less isolated. But the most important point I think I pulled out and put in yellow in the middle, it's a lifeline, isn't it? We take it for granted. We all take it for granted, and perhaps that's something that we need to consider. I wanted to highlight Vishali, a little bit about Vishali. Vishali is a very interesting man. Has spent very many years on the streets, rough sleeping and in temporary accommodation. He started to turn his life around now with a lot of work and input from key workers. But I just wanted, you can take this away at a later stage and read it in detail. But really, this encapsulates the issues for people that are homeless. You can see how he said he felt like an asthmatic that had lost his inhaler when he lost his phone. How he sat outside Asda trying to leech off their Wi-Fi, you know, possibly in the rain, trying to get some kind of connectivity. All these appointments that he keeps through with his doctor, universal credit, etc. But the most important thing I wanted to highlight at the bottom was he's now in a stable condition and he has unlimited data. More of that in a moment. Okay, for me, the issue for homeless people is twofold. It's devices and it's connectivity. And I think the two go hand in hand. So in terms of devices, as I said there, I think what the pandemic showed with Cambridge Online and other organisations, we became really good at recycling devices, getting them clean, getting them out there. But I think the difference for homeless people is the phone is the most practical solution because they need to make phone calls as well as being able to connect to the internet. Just very briefly, obviously Cambridge Online can probably talk for themselves later on. Jimmy's, Wintercomfort and Cyrenians, they all hand out devices. And as you'll hear from Leon and Melody, they all try to provide some digital skills. As I say, I haven't got time to talk about that this morning. One issue Cyrenian said is often their donated phones are old bricks. They may not be particularly smart, but if they are, often somebody who's homeless has got very limited experience of using a smart device. So there comes the digital skills issue. Cambridge Street Aid, again, you can donate to that. People can use that. Homeless people can use that to buy kit. But for me, the most important thing and the real nut that we have to crack is connectivity. It's all well and good having a device, but if you can't connect, what's the point? It's just a doorstop. So very briefly, you know about the public access library, computers in libraries and community centres. The issue there is often the opening times are limited. You have a 1 hour maximum. In some places, you have to book that. And there's also a lack of privacy. Do you want to be talking to your drug counsellor or your key worker or about medical issues when you're sitting in a public forum? You could go to a cafe, a bar, or like Vishali did, sit outside a shop. But often you might not be welcome unless you purchase something, a coffee or whatever that is. And again, there are connectivity issues in terms of the signal being a bit dodgy, but also there's a lack of privacy. CAM Wi-Fi, some of you may know that that's the public access Wi-Fi system that goes through the spine of Cambridge and in other places. I've got quite a lot of experience of wrestling with that. It's not the best thing in the world. The signal and the connection vary greatly. And again, there are issues with privacy. And then finally, there's the free SIMs. By free SIM cards, I mean, when we hand out a SIM card that's been donated to us with some preloaded data on there, 6 gig, 10 gig, whatever that is. The problem there is once that data runs out, once that person has used that 6 gigabytes, what often happens for a homeless person on the street is they don't have the money to top it up. So they go back to the key worker or the organisation and they get another SIM card, which could mean a completely different telephone number, which means that there's a period when they are disconnected again. Okay, so how do we ensure that our homeless neighbours stay connected? Data is key. Remember Vishali said now that he had unlimited data, he suddenly felt far less isolated. Very, very quickly, because I know that we have a limited amount of time. So addressing data poverty. There are a couple of initiatives that have started this year as a result of the pandemic, and it clearly showed not just homeless people, but families on low incomes, etc., were being disconnected through lack of data. The National Data Bank, the Good Things Foundation, Virgin Media and O2, this is an initiative where they're making £12.5 million worth of data available. It's a pilot going at the moment. So for a person to get some data, to be given some data, they have to go to one of the online centres dotted around the country and in Cambridge. So there's a process that needs to be followed. A similar similar initiative that's been brought together by Vodafone is Charities Connected. It's a similar idea. They will create a data bank. There will be data there, and charities can apply for SIM cards that have a certain amount of data on them. In the case of Vodafone, it's quite a generous allowance. It's 20 gigabytes. But it still comes a problem where we often hand out SIM cards to homeless people and we say to them, we've only got 6 gigabytes to last you 3 months. And they use it in a day or 2 days or 3 days. What do we do then? Well, I think this is a great start. It's long overdue. But what I would like to see, and I just want to leave you with this, is I'd like you to go away and look at an initiative called Donate Your Data from Australia. It was started about 3 years ago, and it's a very simple concept. It takes that national data bank, but it allows individuals like you and I to donate any excess data we have into that bank. So, for example, if I have 10 gigabytes a month on my allowance on my mobile phone and I only use 5, there's a very simple process where I can say I want to donate that 5 gigabytes into that bank. So it's a way of us saying to the telecoms companies, you charge me for 10 gigabytes, I only use 5, I want to donate my 5 gigabytes. Data is then distributed on a monthly basis, and it's a very, very simple process to do that. I'd urge you to go away and find out more. That's about it from me. Obviously, what Sally said is she would share all of these, all of our details later on after the event. I'm working for It Takes a City now. Those have known me of old. So please get in touch and let's actually start to try and crack this nut. Thank you very much. How's that for time, Sally?
Yes, lovely, lovely. Perfect.
Thank you. Okay, so next we're going to be hearing from Simon. Simon works for Riverside Housing, and he will be talking to you about the work that they've been doing at the foyer in Rustat Road. Over to you, Simon.
Great, thanks very much, Matt. So I guess quick bio from me. So I just want to check that you can see my starting slide there. Has that worked? That's good. Thanks, everyone. So yeah, great to see everyone on the call. I've lived in Cambridge for 2 decades, and I've worked in homelessness for the same length of time. So through the noughties, I worked in all the what are now Riverside services and what were back then English Churches Housing Group services. So that's Willow Walk, the Victoria Project, what is now the Springs, and of course the Cambridge Youth Foyer on Rustat Road, where I was managing that service for about 5 years. A really amazing position to be in, coming into a new service and kind of building it up from an empty shell. And I guess I should also introduce Riverside, and so just moving that slide on, there we go. So Riverside, yeah, like I said, English Churches Housing Group, as it was, merged with Riverside back in 2007. Riverside is a large social housing provider of 57,000 social housing homes, but our specialism is in supporting vulnerable people, and so we have 12,000 people a year who we help, and at any one time we've got 3,500 people within the care and support division of Riverside. And those services that we provide, like those services in Cambridge, they're accommodation based often, but then we've also got floating support services, we've got housing first, we've got outreach services, foyers, veteran services. In fact, if you kind of think of a kind of service, then across the country somewhere we'll probably be delivering it. So it's a wide breadth of service for vulnerable people specializing in homelessness. So I guess what I want to talk about today is just our digital inclusion journey. One thing that we've managed to do recently is that, you know, co-production is a big deal for us, and we really want to shape services together with our customers. So here's something, this is something, the first time we tried this, because of the work that we've done so far, we are able to reach our customers more effectively, and so just sent out a quick team survey. Took about 10 minutes to put together, and now with the connectivity that our customers do have, we got back within a couple of days 127 hits on that survey. And so there on the left with trust in the center, that's a word map of what people were saying they wanted from Riverside services. None of that will come as any surprise. That hasn't changed in 20 years. So in fact, that hasn't changed in 100 years or since the dawn of time. You know, this is about how we help people. It's about one person's relationship with another person and the environment within which that happens. So here's one thing on the right that has changed, as Matt was saying, changed enormously. Digital inclusion now is the same as financial inclusion, as health equality, as the ability to work and build a career. Social inclusion is digital inclusion in a lot of ways now. The digital is like an overlay over the top of all of it, and it gives, you know, it gives us all agency in the world. And so, you know, our journey has been about trying to merge these two word maps together, if you like, how we can build those relationships, support people to live more independently, and do that acknowledging that the world has changed towards the digital. So what we've done so far is in all of our accommodation-based schemes, we've got Wi-Fi in the communal areas. And that's fine, except you can imagine in lockdown that, you know, there's like, oh, the Wi-Fi is in the communal areas. Well, that's the one place that you couldn't go, you know, and so it is then, well, we needed to do something fairly quickly. So we got a quick kind of fund together, put a survey out to all the staff in the organization saying, look, who needs devices? And what we decided was MiFi style unlimited SIMs, so that you, like as Matt was saying, you change your SIM, you change your number, but if we could provide a MiFi unit that you could connect to as if it was Wi-Fi, but it's powered by a SIM, that we thought was the best solution. So we did just deliver those, you know, just spend as a one-off spend, just deliver those, give people hopefully 3 to 6 months of use, because those communal areas were out of bounds. But now, learning from that, we are delivering right across our accommodation portfolio. We're delivering Wi-Fi to the individual customer rooms, you know, hotel style Wi-Fi service. And that's what I'm currently responsible for rolling that out. And currently we're crunching through the work and the decisions around that. So I just wanted to give a bit of time to look at what we've where we've got to with that. So this is the highlights page here. So, you know, some of the decisions that you have to make as a landlord is, you know, do you go for a kind of basically a domestic service, or do you go for a more kind of corporate approach? Well, with 5,000 units that we're, you know, potentially looking to supply a service to the rooms, there's no question of that. It has to be a corporate approach, has to go through, you know, a clear procurement system. It's a lot of money being spent, probably something like £300,000 to roll that out to the rooms. So that means where you get options that you wouldn't get with a domestic service, like this overlay. So an overlay, that would be like a switch in all of the services which can monitor the content, can ensure that it's a safe service. So, you know, when you've got people who are especially vulnerable, you've got safeguarding responsibilities, then it makes sense to us to, yes, we need to provide a Wi-Fi service, but we need to be able to do that as safely as possible. So hence the overlay, but that is more expensive. It also does, though, give us options around this bandwidth throttling, which is there. So what that is, you know, if you ever had your neighbor on, you know, a gaming device, or you know, live streaming, or some ways of using the internet take up more bandwidth than others, you know. So through a switch, such as a Meraki switch, you're able to monitor that and set a cap on how much bandwidth you can take up with a single device. And so that's been really, really useful in terms of managing those kind of neighbor issues with Wi-Fi usage. So that's been a real learning point for us. Uncontested lines. So, you know, usually we get a service and we're sharing it with the rest of the street. So, you know, if you're looking at purchasing more on a bigger scale, you can buy uncontested lines. We've got some really large supported housing projects with, say, maybe 100 units in some areas in London, especially. So we might buy in 3 uncontested lines just for that. It's basically a street by itself, isn't it? You know, so you need to make sure that the impact is on the broadband infrastructure of the area isn't too great. There's no point delivering a service that then you know, doesn't work or leaves people without the connectivity that they need. Service charges, here's an interesting one. So, you know, you've got a capital spend. You may be able to capitalize that and not necessarily charge that back to customers. What about the revenue spend per year? So say that works out as, say, £30, just as a notional amount, £30 per person per year. Are you going to foot the bill as a landlord, or are you going to, you know, look to appropriately charge that back to customers? But, you know, our customers are in, you know, the claiming universal credit. If you charge them 58 pence a week for broadband, that might sound reasonable. It sounds reasonable to me as a charge, but it's coming from a very limited resource. You know, more questions that we've looked at about whether it's you know, whether that amount would be eligible for, you know, housing benefit, for instance. And if you ask that to 100 different people, you will get 100 different answers. So, you know, you could you need to make some kind of policy decisions on these. Our decision has been to protect customers from as much of these costs as possible, thinking that they are a necessary part of the kind of core housing service, you know, as much as is practicable. And lastly, last thing I wanted to flag up was co-production commitments. So we want to produce everything with our customers. And here's an example where we've been able to do that with providing new furniture to customers' rooms. Then we did customer events where you get the suppliers to build a stand with that furniture. You can see it, you can touch it, you can you know, grab hold of it, you can test it, you can try and break it. We've struggled having that same level of customer involvement with decisions around broadband because you can't grab hold of it and test it in quite the same way. And so that's been a real challenge. I certainly don't have the answers to that. And yeah, and that's about it. So just wanted to flag up that these slides are going out, but if you did want any further info, then I'm definitely available for a conversation about that. So there's the contact details for myself. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much for that, Simon. And again, agree with Simon that obviously we're all always welcome to receive contact from you outside of this session. So please do get in touch if you've got anything to share or you've got any questions you might have. Please do that. Okay, so thanks for that, Simon. So without further ado, let's move on then to Melody and Leon from Wintercomfort. I think you're going to do a double header here, aren't you guys? So I don't think there's any screen to share. So straight over to Leon and Melody.
Hi there, I'm Melody. I'm the Fundraising and Communications Manager at Wintercomfort for the Homeless. For those of you, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with our services, but just a very brief overview of what we do. We are an advice and support hub for homeless and vulnerably housed people in Cambridge. We have a physical base, which is called Overstream House, which is at the end of Victoria Avenue, quite close to Mitcham's Corner. We provide welfare support for rough sleepers, that's meals, laundry services, toiletries, showers, but more broadly, we support lots of people experiencing homelessness in different ways with a whole range of services that help people to empower them to make positive changes in their lives and to move forward and break the chain of homelessness. And that's, we have specialist support for people to move into housing, we've got specialist support for those seeking employment, lots of different counselling services for those experiencing mental health issues or those people working to overcome addiction. And traditionally, we would have offered all of those services in our lovely centre. And this is predating my time with Wintercomfort. I only joined in October last year, so I joined during the pandemic, but I find it very hard to picture Wintercomfort before the pandemic restrictions. It was a very busy place with sometimes 60, 70 people bustling around on the main floor, accessing services face to face. Obviously, the pandemic stopped all of that instantly, and overnight we had to really adapt and change our services to continue our support in different ways. So one of the first things that we did was to supply all of our service users that needed one with a mobile phone or a tablet and with SIM cards and data. And people were living at this stage in a whole range of settings via the Everyone In initiative. So people were very dispersed. But obviously, as we've all experienced throughout lockdown, isolation and anxiety were things that absolutely rocketed during that time. And for many of our community, that overnight change of being put into an unfamiliar setting with completely different rules and different people and different ways of existing was very challenging. And so we recognised that digital support, making sure that everyone had that access to being able to access our services continuously was absolutely critical. So that's something that we did. Now, we actually found, and Leon can talk about this more than myself, but we actually found that for many people, removing the barrier of having to physically come to our base for support was very helpful for some people in increasing engagement with different services. And so as we move forward, and we all know that we're not out of the woods yet with COVID, but as we move forward, we have made some very well-considered changes to our services to continue that remote support where people want it. So really that's where we are now. We're quite a different charity to where we were 18 months ago, still providing the same support, obviously, and still supporting the same kind of people in those ways, but the way we do that has changed. And that's it for me, really. I'm not a frontline project worker, so I would like to introduce Leon, who is our digital inclusion and social inclusion project worker. So his role, in addition to the general support that he offers to people, is to really help people to feel a sense of connectivity and belonging within society, and to build self-confidence and self-resilience to move forward with their lives. And digital inclusion is a large part of that. So he can talk about his personal experiences and the ways we support individuals on the floor. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Melody. So yeah, as Melody touched upon there, while it brings its own challenges, it did allow for extra freedom and flexibility in supporting those, whether that was over regular phone appointments, but it did really highlight the the necessity for digital literacy and the massive skills gap in our service users, especially those who are older or have, not needed to pick up a smartphone, or sort of avoided it for many, many years because they're always able to come into the centre and just grab someone. And when that wasn't an option, it really did highlight that gap. So as we gave out devices to people, we did, offered one-to-one IT support, whether that was over the phone or going out to visit people at their accommodation. Spent a lot of time setting up smartphones with people and trying to get them literate with their devices. We became so aware of the stumbling blocks, as you touched upon earlier, Matt. Everything has to be online, whether it's your online banking. I may take for granted that I can use an online app and I can log in every time, but someone it just doesn't make as much sense to them if they're not used to using it. They have to remember which letters of this code gets them into their banking, and they get locked out, and then it makes it more difficult because we'd set people up on if they had issues with traditional banks, we set people up on like Revolut and Monzo and things like that, and good luck trying to speak to an actual person to unlock someone's account there. So off the back of that, now that we are a bit more open as a service, we've started doing drop-ins for digital literacy twice a week, and service users can come in, and it's a place that they know that they can get that more detailed support, whether that's setting up email addresses or doing online shopping, or accessing universal credit, or unpicking their online banking. That's a lot of what we moved towards before. I mean, it doesn't really need to be reiterated, but the necessity of digital inclusion is just so broad. A big part of it was alleviating boredom throughout lockdowns. That was so crucial to be able to get people online to do that. And we did that through providing people with data top-ups and just general top-ups as well. Accessing recovery, as Melody mentioned, and all our counselling sessions have gone remote as well. So that's something that we continue to provide, and has actually allowed for more people to engage with that service now that it's remote, and people don't actually have to come in for the appointment. They can just make sure that their phone's on. That as we move forward, we'll look to continuing with having regular drop-ins, making sure that everyone in the homeless community and vulnerably housed community is aware that is somewhere that they can come, even if big or small, whatever the issue is, to get that sorted. And that's a service that I'm really proud to be able to offer. Also, just to give you like a specific example, there's a few service users that, I suppose it's kind of the same example, but it's still really important. Service users that have really struggled with engagement for many, many years, with all sorts of different services, have just found now that they can just be on the other end of a phone. It's allowed them to maintain accommodation and maintain appointments where they were never able to before. There's probably other reasons as well, but now that they're able to operate a phone, and they don't have to get themselves to somewhere necessarily for the appointment. It's just made that engagement so much easier, and that's really benefited some really long-term entrenched rough sleepers that may not have been able to make that change otherwise. So really proud to be a part of that, and I hope we can just develop that service going forward. So
Thanks so much for that, Leon. I just wanted to reiterate actually what Leon said is the pandemic, bizarrely, the pandemic has showed key workers and people that work with homeless people that there is an easier and simpler way of doing it, which is to be digitally connected with that person. And as Leon said, you know, we've actually got some entrenched rough sleepers, etc., now engaging, and all of that work during the pandemic of showing that digital works for both sides. Not necessarily always for both, but you know, in often it will work for both sides. And the danger is as we come out of the pandemic and that kind of people start to think, oh, well, digital connectivity is not that important. They're often the same service providers who are moving towards digital by default. And we've shown that there's a way to navigate that easily and we don't want to lose that. So thanks so much, Leon. I think we're pretty much on time. So we've got 20 minutes. So what I'd like to do is open it up to the floor. If you have any specific questions you want to ask any of the panelists, please do. Or if you're working within the sector and you've got a project or some work you've been doing that you want to share with us. Obviously the focus is on homelessness and digital exclusion. So I'll open it up to the floor and see if there's anybody that's got a question. Please put your hand up if you know how to use the put your hand up sign on Zoom. If not, I'll try and see you physically putting your hand up. So over to you guys.
I can start with one in chat, Matt.
Yeah, please do, Sally. Yeah, thanks.
So I think it's Graham. I don't know if you want to ask your question. But how do you handle the downsides of digital, like online gambling?
Leon, I mean, is that something that you've come across with some of the people you work with?
Not specifically online gambling, but I was thinking more like scams and fraud and things like that. That's something that we've come across, especially if someone's not digitally literate, they can really fall foul of these things. So yeah, that has to be part of the initial education, depending on that service user's needs and how literate they are. We do provide, I mean, we've got actual training for staying safe online, but really that has to be a conversation to be had when we give someone an online capable device. Yeah, it is really, really important. Not specifically online gambling, but yeah, that's a great question, and that's something that we should be aware of as well. And that's maybe something that we could bring into our sort of explainers and education with people, because yeah, that can be absolutely crippling.
Lovely, thanks Leon. Paul, you got your hand up. Paul Russell.
Yeah. Hi everybody. Apologies for being late. And this is more of a observation / story. I mean, I've just become an ambassador for the Digital Poverty Alliance, and I'm talking on Friday at this event. But we had our first board meeting last week, and we were talking about, you know, when we're converging on the problem, you know, sometimes, you know, there's another stage to that problem. And this story that I was talking about happened in America with the NFL. And last year, the NFL, there was an app that fans could use to order food to their seat, you know, the hot dogs and drinks. And of course, pandemic emptied the stadiums. So they pivoted the app and looked at food bank queues and said, well, wouldn't it be really cool if we could remove the queues that are around the block, you know, address stigma, and at the same time, maybe create a volunteer workforce. So they did this. So people then could go and book their delivery of food to their home, and, you know, start to tackle the problem. But of course, there was another problem they hadn't necessarily seen, which was either people were homeless, didn't have access to the technology or didn't know how to use it. So that idea that, you know, in their attempt to help solve a problem, they didn't fully understand the problem. So this idea of not think outside the box, but to think there is no box was the point that we were chatting about. And the only other kind of anecdotal story is I was talking to someone who runs the Manchester United's commercial business, and we got chatting about football, and we talked about Ronaldo, the impact and everything else. But he told me this wonderful story that I hadn't realized, that Manchester United, in common with other Premiership football clubs, still posted out their tickets. And it was only last year that they moved to digital ticketing, and it saved them a load of money on postal charges, which was great for them. But in doing that, they realized that 30% of the fans weren't able to access their tickets. And so I was saying to him, so there you have a crowd of 70,000 people now, and you don't know enough about them. You don't know their situation, and you didn't really care before, but now you possibly do. And how are you going to capture that? So it's not really an action, but it was more of an observation about getting us to think about the adjacent problem that we haven't thought about, and what does that look like, and be prepared to fail. I think was the outcome was, you know, don't be scared to fail, because by failing you're going to find something out. And those quick stories I just thought I'd share.
Absolutely, thanks so much, Paul. And I think that actually does raise an important issue about co-production. Is if somebody comes up with a good idea, like a corporate, whoever that is, comes up with a good idea and they think it's a good idea, the earliest possible stage, get in touch with the people that are working with people that currently experience it, whether it's homelessness or whatever it is, because doing unto them is not the issue. It sounds like a brilliant idea and a brilliant concept, but then often the corporates will think about it from a corporate level. You're right. So get down on the front line in Cambridge, talk to people like Wintercomfort, Jimmy's, ourselves. Thanks for that, Paul. I've got a question from Serena, which says, where do we refer people who need digital support, and do you have a direct website, email, etc.? Serena, I mean, I'll reply briefly to say Cambridge Online in Cambridge provide, you know, lots and lots of digital drop-in sessions around a number of community centres around Cambridge. So probably contact Cambridge Online. Sally, would that be the best advice in the first instance, to get information about what's available in Cambridge?
Yeah, definitely. I'll pop their website in the chat for you as well.
Lovely. And Serena, obviously the work that Wintercomfort do with people who are currently experiencing homelessness is I'm assuming because they will present at Wintercomfort. So so that's obviously something. Lisa, you've put Cambridge libraries also have Learn My Way. Do you want to just expand on that, Lisa, rather than myself?
You'd probably be best off asking Rosie from the library service, I think, who's on the call as well, because she'll be able to tell you much more about it.
Brilliant. I know about Learn My Way, Rosie, but do you want to tell the rest of the people on the call?
Yeah, I mean, basically every library in Cambridgeshire is registered as an online centre with Good Things Foundation. Learn My Way is a government funded package to deliver digital skills to everyone in the UK. Very easy, very accessible to use, and it will take you from never having seen a mouse before all the way through to online banking, shopping. It's all video call based, video based. It's very, very approachable. It's very visual, and you know, it will even talk you through how to do a video call with a consultant. It does address every corner and every aspect, and it seems to be a very well kept secret.
Do you know, I will agree with that, Lisa. You know, I was pushing that for many years. I think Learn My Way is a great resource. Lisa, just in terms of for a homeless person, once they've signed up onto course, do the materials work just as well on mobile phones as other devices? I'm just trying to think if they wanted to do some learning away from the online centre.
Shall I take that one, Lisa?
Yeah, please,
Rosie. Sorry, Rosie.
That's all right, no problem.
That's all right. Yeah, I find, to be honest, it's best on a PC or a laptop. Right. You can view it on a device, but you really, for full functionality, I've always found, especially if someone's got very, very low digital skills, you need to be able to see as much as possible.
Lovely, thanks. I'm just looking down in the chat. Any other questions from the floor? I'm looking to see if there's any hands up.
I think Leon put his hand up, actually.
Oh, sorry, Leon. Back to you.
Sorry, it's just a question for Rosie. I think I was emailing with one of your colleagues, Anna Silver, about the Learn My Way programme. And is it something that you have to be at the library to do, or can you give a licence to, say, us if we wanted to do it? Or
anybody can access Learn My Way from anywhere. Because we are registered centres, we have a registered number. So if someone wants to sign up at one of our libraries, we would ask them to put the centre number in so we can actually just track who's using it. Cambridge Online will do that far more forensically than we do. I mean, we're struggling at the moment to recruit enough digital buddies to relaunch the offer coming out of lockdown. We've got airflow risk assessments. We've got, you know, how do you sit next to someone to be a digital buddy? My assisted digital working group, you know, we're ploughing that furrow constantly. So it can be done. I mean, we regularly promote it on our social media pages, and then people may just access it from home. We will never know that because we're not promoting centre numbers. But it's ironic that, you know, there are probably maybe 5 or 6 online centres in Cambridgeshire actually delivering at the moment. Some registered for devices and for pots of funding and don't deliver. We're hamstrung by a lack of buddies at the moment and risk assessments. So given that Cambridgeshire looks really good on a map, that we look to have almost 40 online centres, we've possibly only got 5 or 6 delivering.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you, Rosie.
Interesting. Yeah, sorry, Leon, do you want to come back on that? Are you okay?
No, it's just saying thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I really would say, Leon, Learn My Way is probably the best sort of short, sharp, little packages training program that I've ever seen. And you're right, Rosie, it is a bit of a secret that's been kept under the table for quite a while. So I really would encourage people to do that. Any other questions? If not, I will bang my drum about data again, because it's my personal mission. I mean, I don't know how we'll do it, but all of the digital skills, all of the public access computers, all of that are brilliant. We're doing some really great work in Cambridge, and we're doing some great work across the UK. The Good Things Foundation have been doing some amazing work in various other jobs I've been involved in conferences and working with them. They've been brilliant. But if I could ask you to take one thing away, I'd ask you to take away how do we get the same system in this country that they have in Australia, where I can just simply set up. At the moment, a number of the big telecom companies are allowing you within family and friends circles to donate your data. But I'll be honest, my granddaughter has more than enough data. She doesn't need any of mine, okay? But I want to be able to donate that to somebody who's going in to see Leon. I want my 5 gigabytes, 1 gigabyte, whatever it is, to go into a bank that Leon hasn't got to jump through hoops. He hasn't got to fill in some long application form. He's a trusted vendor, like they have in Australia. Wintercomfort are a pucker organisation. They're a trusted vendor. So they would trust Leon to turn around and say that person needs 5 gigabytes for this month, or I know that they've got a lot of perhaps key worker appointments, or they're having problems getting their universal credit. So I want to give them 10 gigabytes. It's such a simple system. It's a zero cost, zero sum game for the telecoms companies. Because they're selling us something that doesn't really exist anyway. They're selling me 10 gigabytes of space on their network, and it doesn't exist until I use it. But they've sold me a number, and I want to take that number and I want to say, if you've sold it to me, it's mine. It's a bit like when you go to a car park and you do the naughty thing as you're driving out, and you hand your ticket that's still got 2 hours on it to the next person coming in. I've bought a space for 3 hours in that car park. If I use an hour, why shouldn't I be able to pass it on? So I'm just banging my drum on that. Please go away and have a look at Donate Your Data and see how we can kind of influence those two, the Vodafone and the Good Things Foundation and the Virgin Project. They're great. Once they're set up, personally, I don't think we should be beholden to the generosity of a corporate to decide they're going to add another 10 million or another 15 million to it. Let me add my data. That's my drum banged anyway. So still got a few more minutes. If anybody wants to comment before we round up, please do comment now, or obviously contact us later.
Hi, Matt.
You put your hand up, Sally.
I was just Graham did put his hand up a little while ago.
So yeah, I can't see everyone across the screen. Sorry. So I think it's Graham and then Karen, is it? Yeah. So Graham.
Sometimes people are suspicious. Do some people kind of fall for this conspiracy view that I'm being tracked, that I'm now going to be, viewable by the authorities? Because some people just want to kind of disappear, don't they? And how do you overcome that hurdle?
Leon, I mean, do you get that from people when you ask? You offer them digital connectivity?
Yeah, and I mean, it is of course anyone's prerogative to turn it down if they don't want it. We're not going to force anyone to have a phone or to have data. We can only recommend and offer the opportunities of it. Yeah, so a lot of these conspiracy theories, they're not necessarily rational. I don't think they're rational. So to try and have a discussion about them, you just got to keep plugging away at it, I suppose. You just got to keep offering. Like we had someone who had extremely minimal contact and only ever really showed up here for food and would never go anywhere else. And eventually, after just offering so many times, we did get him to take a mobile phone and to have contacts, to be contactable through that. So yeah, you just got to keep offering, keep having the conversation. If I'm not going to get into an argument with someone about whether 4G is a conspiracy or whatever, but maybe just on another day when they're feeling different, they might actually think, oh well, the benefits outweigh the negatives. I'm gonna pick something up.
Lovely. Thanks, Leon. Karen, did you have your hand up? I see you put something in the chat.
I was just going to say that Cambridge Online's main learning centre in Cheston has started opening again this Monday just gone. So if anybody knows anybody that needs to learn online skills, they can phone up and make an appointment. And also, if you know anybody that needs a device, I've just put in the chat, there's a little registration form you can fill in, because Cambridge Online have got various devices that they've got through various projects, and also recycled kit that they can donate to people. So if you just go to that registration form, fill it out, and then someone will be in touch. Okay.
Cheers, Karen. I'd reiterate that. Absolutely. Go to Cambridge Online. It should be your first port of call, really, for any of this, particularly at, say, devices. My previous job at the City Council, we could see just how quickly Cambridge Online and the partnership can actually turn those devices around and get them back out there. I'm just having a quick look. We've got a couple of minutes left. I'm just having a quick look in the chat. If you look in the chat, Sally, I'm going to do the, please fill in the evaluation form. That will be really important. This is obviously the first time that the Digital Partnership have run this conference and run this series of events. Hopefully it will become an annual thing around Get Online Week. Obviously Get Online Week, if you don't know about it, please go and find out more about it. That's obviously an important one. Lots of information there. Danielle says Cambridge Online are brilliant. I know they are. Absolutely agree with that. I'm just having a look around for any final questions before. Nope, can't see anyone. So that said, obviously, I'll just hand back to Sally in a moment just to do the sort of final goodbyes. But thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We probably haven't answered any of your questions. We may have actually raised more than you started with. But I hope you can see that there's a lot of people that are dedicated to this and have a passion for it. And I hope also you might have seen there are issues specific to somebody who is homeless. Many of us on this call are kind of working with people that lack digital skills or connectivity, but what they don't lack is a permanent address. Once you lose that permanent address and you lose that, whether it's a Wi-Fi connection or just the ability to be able to take out contracts, it can quickly snowball. Okay, so please bear that in mind and continue the conversation with us and with the partnership, because they are aware that, we want to pick this up and run with it. So, Sally, over to you.
Great, thank you. That was all really, really interesting. A few comments in the chat just to wrap up. Cambridge Online are brilliant, and digital drop-ins at the Huntington Library, 11 to 12 all this week. So Rosie's popped that in there. For the conference, we've got an event tomorrow that's still got tickets around the digital skills gap. I've just put the link in the chat, so if you want to book your place, then please do. It's on at the same time as today. But thank you. I will send you an email with the slides. You can follow us on Twitter, CampDigi, and we'll let you know when the videos are ready. But if you have any questions, just get in touch with us. But thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you.